The goddess is alive and magic is afoot. Today we are going to be looking at this wonderful piece of work called The Holy Book of Women's Mysteries by the dishonorable Z Budapest. I guess I'll start by going over the covers and stuff. There's a lot of high praise sketched all over my version. Hi. And my familiar has chosen to come and bless this look through today. So aren't we lucky? Yes. Yes. I'm glad you have a copy too, Radical by Choice. This version that I have, I believe, was published in 1989. But we'll get into that as I look through it. So let's read this. An opportunity to read the words of a woman who not only writes of the goddess faith beautifully, but lives the faith on a day-to-day basis. Z Budapest continues to open pathways for all of us. Merlin Stone, author of When God Was a Woman. The back has a quote from Phyllis Chesler, author of Women in Madness and many more. It says, "The Holy Book is an original, gentle, wonderful, magical, large in scope, hugely imaginative, a guide, memories on the screen, wholesome food for the woman's soul. Women's rites and rites combine in a celebration of the goddess. Divination, spells, rituals, and herstory. The Holy Book of Women's Mysteries is a feminist survival guide teaching individual and group witchcraft, women's health and nutrition for strength and power, and the valuable lessons of foremothers have handed down to us. Read and enjoy. The Holy Book of Women's Mysteries has something for every mother's daughter." Feminist witchcraft is natural female power, conceived by historical necessity, fueled by emotional necessity, and delivered by those brave women who consider slavery of the soul and emptiness of the heart more of a threat than not being safe. Zsuzsanna Budapest, the founding mother of the contemporary women's spirituality movement, was the first to coin the term feminist spirituality. She is currently the director of the Women's Spirituality Forum, which I don't believe is true anymore, but Anyway, I hope you're all looking forward to looking through this with me. I know that right now we need some magic, don't we? And this book has a lot to offer. So get excited and let's see what we find. And before I get started, I just want to say hi to Wadamote and Rowan T and also YouTube Humor. Glad you're all here. And I'll check in with the chat periodically, of course. So, let's see. The Holy Book of Women's Mysteries. So, yeah. My copy is from 1989. The table of contents has a piece on how the book was born, a foreword by Phyllis Chesler, and then the introduction. The first chapter is titled Feminist Witchcraft. The second chapter, The Dianic Tradition and the Rites of Life. Chapter 3 is on celebrating the holy days of the earth, so it has all of the different pagan holidays that witches like to celebrate. Chapter 4 is on women's holidays in the Dianic tradition, which is particularly interesting, and some of these festivals and holidays are quite significant, so I think we're going to spend some time there for sure. Chapter 5 is The Goddess and the God. Chapter 6 is on prophecy, so it deals with tarot, runes, astrology, dreams, past lives, automatic writing. Chapter 7 is on the politics of food. So there's sections on meat, sugar, and like eating live foods. Chapter 8, witches, covens, shamans, magic, and ritual. Chapter 9 is on shamanism through herstory. Chapter 10 is Masika's Book of Life, a Hungarian heritage, as our dear Budapest is of Hungarian origin. And chapter 11 is on the goddess of 10,000 names. So there's quite a bit to get through. Hopefully I will have the stamina today to get through all of it. Let's look at this. I like to dedicate this 20th anniversary edition of the Holy Book of Women's Mysteries to all those women who organized, published, and pioneered on behalf of the goddess for the past 2 decades. May we be remembered with love and honor by those who follow us and take our calling and dedication to the goddess into the 21st century. May the goddess never be forgotten again. It is quite an extensive work, and it comprises so much knowledge. And it's dense. So I am going to, as I pick through and read things, try to be really mindful about what I think is needed right now in terms of just comfort and also knowledge for women to have right now. This book is full of great things. How this book was born. Once upon a time, somewhere in Virginia, there were 2 ex-nuns, Laura and Beach, who embarked on the adventure of following the path of the goddess with a precious and rare copy of a book in their hands. This book was called the Feminist Book of Light and Shadows. They also had with them a basket filled with candles and food to share, and Peppy, their trusted mutt. And so they set out in the middle of a windy Halloween night. Beach was reading avidly by flashlight about the ritual for Halloween when a gust of wind dislodged the book from her hand and carried it triumphantly toward the nearby woods where they were headed. Laura dropped the basket immediately and began to chase the airborne copy, but to no avail. For a moment, Beach thought God the man was getting even with them for heresy. Laura thought the goddess was sending the book ahead of them as a sign for their newly found faith. But Peppy was delighted with the chase, which she punctuated with wild barks and gruffs at the ever-flying, winged book that flew with such ease, each female following it, caught up in her own way in the night's excitement. Finally, in the woods, a birch tree snatched the book out of the wind's hold and dropped it on the wet autumn grass. Peppy immediately snatched it up and brandished it between her teeth. This was the last copy in the world of the Feminist Book of Light and Shadows. I'm telling you this story because these 2 women were instrumental in our continuing to publish the Feminist Book of Light and Shadows, which later became the Holy Book of Women's Mysteries. They wrote us a letter of such vivid detail that we realized the hunger for this information was greater than we had thought. We needed to raise funds, turn the pamphlet into a more permanent form, and keep it in print. The Susan B. Anthony Coven No. 1 was just an experiment at the time, started on the winter solstice of 1971 with a handful of friends, later growing into a fluctuating group of between 20 and 120 women. We met every Sabbath, the solstices, equinoxes, and high points in between, and every full moon, which occurred 13 times a year. This was a vigorous pagan practice of observing 21 major holidays per year. What we put on paper was pretty much that we were doing what we were doing in the mountains in Malibu. But by the time we wrote it down, we had already changed one practice, so we kept telling readers not to slavishly follow the patterns we suggested, but to internalize the patterns and then improvise what suited them best. We met on Sundays at Mama's Cafe in Malibu. There are about 8 of us in the core group, and I'd like to thank each of them, those who came and practiced with us, and those who helped create the Holy Book of Women's Mysteries. Janet Roseland, of course, was the most instrumental in holding us together with her seriousness as an organizer and her bursts of mediumship. She channeled the goddess as the dean of the college. Of course, the college was the universe. She would close her eyes, and her voice would come out sounding prim and higher than usual. "Now, girls," she would say, "you must learn all of the curriculum here at the college. The herbs on my back, the trees in my hair, my nature, which is yours. And we want no tardiness in attention. Graduation is closed." Janet also found a remark written by Florence Nightingale, whom we all admired. She posed a very potent question. Do you think it is possible for there to be a religion whose essence is common sense? This question prompted us to respond to her across time and say, yes, the earth religions are such that their essence, their dogma, so to speak, is common sense that glorifies practical things and the improvement of our lives right now, not later after death, which is absurd. In Malibu, we sat around a weather-beaten old table outside Mama's Cafe, eating our eggs and potatoes, drinking coffee, talking and fantasizing and laughing, and knowing that we were new and doing something revolutionary that was going to influence the world around us. However, we didn't know to what great effect. The sun beat down on our backs as we scribbled our notes. And so the Holy Book of Women's Mysteries was born after many such meetings, contributions, suggestions, stimulation, nourishment, and a lot of bacon and eggs at Mama's Cafe. I'm going to stop there with this section. Chapter 1, Feminist Witchcraft, and there's this lovely goddess image. Politics of Women's Religion, Manifesto of the Susan B. Anthony Coven, Number 1. We believe that feminist witches are women who search within themselves for the female principle of the universe and who relate as daughters to the creatrix. We believe that, just as it is time to fight for the right to control our bodies, it is also time to fight for our sweet woman souls. We believe that in order to fight and win a revolution that will stretch for generations into the future, we must find reliable ways to replenish our energies. We believe that without a secure grounding in women's spiritual strength, there will be no victory for us. We believe that we are part of a changing universal consciousness that has long been feared and prophesied by the patriarchs. We believe that goddess consciousness gave humanity a workable, long-lasting, peaceful period during which Earth was treated as a mother and women were treated as her priestesses. We believe that women lost supremacy through the aggressions of males who were exiled from the matriarchies and formed the patriarchal hordes responsible for the invention of rape and the subjugation of women. We believe that female control of the death principle yields human evolution. I'm also wearing death on me today, so very important to remember that women should be in control of not only life but death. We are committed to living life lovingly toward ourselves and our sisters. We are committed to joy, self-love, and life affirmation. We are committed to winning, to surviving, to struggling against patriarchal oppression. We are committed to defending our interests and those of our sisters through the knowledge of witchcraft, to blessing, to cursing, to healing, and to binding with power rooted in woman-identified wisdom. We are opposed to attacking the innocent. We are equally committed to political, communal, and personal solutions. We are committed to teaching women how to organize themselves as witches and to sharing our traditions with women. We are opposed to teaching our magic and our craft to men until the equality of the sexes is a reality. We teach pan workshops today and work together with men who have changed themselves into brothers. Our immediate goal is to congregate with each other according to our ancient woman-made laws and to remember our past, renew our powers, and affirm our goddess of 10,000 names. Women's religion, as in heaven, so on earth. What people believe, faith religion, is political because it influences their actions and because it is the vehicle by which a religion perpetuates a social system. Politics and religion are interdependent. Every new social structure strives to come up with some kind of mythology of divine origin for its values and aims. The mythology is passed on for generations, and often its validity goes unquestioned for centuries. For example, a self-created male god who has no mother is a totally insupportable concept. It is, to say the least, not supernatural, but merely unnatural. Nothing in nature parallels, let alone substantiates, such an absurdity. Everything, even a star, originates somewhere. Every creature in the world has a mother force. Obviously, to deny motherhood is to deny women. Patriarchal religion is built on this denial, which is its only original thought. The rest of the edifice having been ripped off stone by stone from the old faith of paganism, the Christian Trinity is a word-by-word reversal of the fates, the threefold mother, the three graces. The dove is the sacred bird of the Great Mother. The Great Mother was eventually incorporated into the new Christian religion in the form of the Virgin Mary, who is today worshipped in an idolatrous fashion in the Catholic Church. Who absorbs whose culture is a crucial issue on the cultural battlefield. Those who refused to accept this accommodation and continued to practice the ancient art were persecuted. Women's spirituality is rooted in paganism, where women's values are dominant. The goddess worship, the core of paganism, was once universal. Paganism is pleasure-oriented, joy and feasting prone, celebrating life with dancing and lovemaking. Working in harmony with Mother Nature, we discover and recover the all-creatrix, the female power, without whom nothing is born or glad. Male energy pretends to have power by disclaiming the female force. Today, given the patriarchal society within which we live, witchcraft with a feminist, Dianic politics is clearly that the real enemy is the internalized and externalized policing tool that keeps us in fear and psychic clutter. The craft is not only a religion, it is also a lifestyle. In the time of the matriarchies, the craft of women was common knowledge. It was rich in information on how to live on this planet, on how to love and fight and stay healthy, and especially on how to learn to learn. The remnants of that knowledge constitute the body of what we call witchcraft today. The massive remainder of that knowledge is buried within ourselves, in our deep minds, in our genes. In order to reclaim it, we have to open ourselves to psychic experiences in the safety of feminist witch covens. A new kind of trust is the most important contribution that women's spirituality has to give to the women's movement. We learned we can trust our bodies when we learned we had the right to control them. We are learning we can trust our souls through learning that our right to have them is rooted in our recognition of the goddess, of the female principle within the universe and ourselves. It is from this source that our independence comes. Dangers of Magic by Starhawk. Let's read this. There are real dangers to the practice of magic, most of them found within ourselves, particularly before we have a full and deep understanding of how magic works. I have listed here some of the major problems which trip us up with some suggestions for protection. However, it is a necessary part of everyone's magical education to occasionally fall victim to one's character traits. Ain't that the truth? We all find ourselves ego tripping, do-gooding, showing off, and all the rest from time to time. But how else could we learn compassion and tolerance for others who go off on the same tangents? Falling victim to one's own illusions eventually confers a sort of immunity, much like the result of a childhood disease, and with luck, recovery is rapid and complete. Here, then, are the mumps and measles of magic. Omnipotence. This is quite common when first discovering that your will can affect events. You may feel a tremendous rush of power and believe that you can do anything and everything. Experience will cure this fallacy quickly, however, but the condition of omnipotence can lead to guilt. You may believe you can do everything, but sooner or later, you will fail. Sometimes it is the people you care about most whom you are unable to help. Unless you realize that magic has its limitations and works within the framework of laws, just as standard medical science does, you run the risk of feeling responsible for everything that goes wrong in the universe. Relax. You are not that powerful, nor are you that important. Paranoia. As your awareness grows and you become more conscious of negative energy and impulses in others, you may become oversensitive and begin jumping at shadows and protecting against dangers that don't exist. There's also the dodge of ascribing every negative thing that happens to you as psychic attack. A healthy stream of cynicism is a good defense against this one. Remember that magic that is real rarely conflicts with common sense. If you feel beset by evil forces, look within yourself to see what is drawing them. Saintliness. It is hard to resist the temptation to be more spiritual than thou, to offer unasked for advice to your acquaintances, and to look down on others who have not seen the light, all the while trying to appear humble. With any luck at all, you will come back to earth before you lose all of your friends. Showing off. Like saintliness, this is hard to resist. When the fanatic Jehovah's Witness in your chemistry class spouts off about religion, how can you not tell her you see a hypocritical green spot in her aura? With painful experience, however, you will discover that people will not hear or listen to your advice or commentary unless they have asked for it. And the magic only works when it's real, not for show. Going half astral. When you get so caught up in magic and psychic work that you neglect the earthly plane and your physical body, you will become drained and weakened. In extreme cases, people who lose touch too completely with earth can have what amounts to a psychotic break. This is easily avoided, however, by making certain you stay grounded and centered when you do any magical work or meditations. Also, it is vital to have a satisfying and rewarding earth plane life, including a good sex life and a love of good food. The craft should not cause any loss of pleasure or ability to function in your daily life. On the contrary, pleasure and capabilities in ordinary things should only be heightened by your increasing awareness. Your very protection against all of these ills and any others you may meet physically or psychically is to maintain your sense of humor. As long as you laugh at yourself, you cannot head too far down the wrong path. And you always have an immediate ticket back to truth. Whenever you find you are taking yourself too seriously, or whenever you meet someone or something who encourages you to do so, beware. Remember, laughter is the key to sanity. I'm going to skip over this bit about tools and like how to make tools and all of that. But if you do happen upon this book, it does have an extensive list of these things that you can work with in order to practice the craft. Oils, incenses, candles, how to use them, etc. But I'm going to go over that, or I'm not going to go over that. This section is when I was looking through before I wanted to share with all of you. Why should a woman cast a spell? Why not? Everything else has been done. Casting a spell is a willful act, some say. It is interfering with the natural order of things. I say casting a spell is observing and participating as an equal partner in the natural order. A woman is part of the natural order. Her directed willpower is a part of nature. I recognize the reluctance towards casting a spell. It is against every kind of social conditioning you have ever received, so I advocate doing this. Go ahead and scare yourself. It is good for you. Casting a spell in self-defense or in self-interest is not selfish, but positive, life-affirming. You have been given powers, the very same powers that society devalues. Your right brain activity, your hunches, come in handy in this activity. Now is the time to use this very oppression, like Aikido, in your favor. All your life as a woman, you have been encouraged to be intuitive, sensitive, nurturing, and inventive. In spellcasting, that is all you need. But Z, what if it comes back to me tenfold? Well, don't be a fool. Never use your magic to attack the innocent. Then you have nothing to fear. Always target wisely, finding a positive approach toward what you seek. Don't be frivolous or cowardly. If your course is righteous and your tools ready, go for it. Women have enough trouble worrying about being powerless without wasting time worrying about a little power we can use right away. Did I say a little? Not at all. A lot of power. Women can call down nature in their own behalf. For example, we once cast a spell for a custody case. The father hired a very expensive lawyer, and the trial date was only 3 days away. The mother gathered us in a circle, and we raised energy around a sassafras tree, performed spontaneous prayers, chanted the names of the goddess, and offered a small libation of milk to the earth. 3 days later, this woman called to say her husband and his lawyer set out for court and never arrived. She won by default. We still don't know where they went instead. A young woman in Venice, California, came to us after her rape. I have my window open, so I'm sure you all can hear the siren in the background. But it's too beautiful of a day not to let the fresh air in. She knew the man and wanted him prosecuted. We shared a hex with her to bring this man to justice so he could not weasel out from punishment. She performed the hex with our help and buried the remnants in a nearby cemetery. The rapist was caught while eating in a greasy spoon restaurant after raping someone else. The police put him away for all his crimes. He is still in jail. In San Francisco, we performed a spell against the Briggs Initiative, which would have made it illegal for gays to teach. The initiative bit the dust. The success stories are endless and miraculous. Spells are powerful prayers, and they do work. Practice your powers, and you will never again believe that you are inferior. Oh, hi, Shannon. Welcome. How is everyone liking the book so far? Isn't it exciting? We've barely gotten into it. I will read on how to cast the circle because I like their methodology, and the few times that I've been blessed to participate in Dianic circles, they have always been incredible experiences. It's not really my tradition or where I come from magically, so some of this is, while I can draw on it and like use it, it's it's just different than anything else. You participate in different spiritual practices and different forms of magic and casting of circles, and they all have a different flavor, but there is something very, very natural and very affirming about Dianic circles. So just want to say that for anyone who is not practiced in it, I would highly suggest getting experience in it. All right, so let's read about casting the circle. The casting of the circle is crucial for any ritual work. The ritual work must correlate the correct planetary aspects with the purpose of the work. Gather the sisters participating in the ritual and measure a circle by holding each other's hands and standing at arm's length. Mark the circle by gathering a stone to replace one's foot space. Gather more stones and build an altar in the middle of the circle, slightly to the north, the power corner. Upon the stone altar, set your representation of the Mother Goddess. An image or a single rose is fine. Place 2 white candles, one to the east, one to the west, of the goddess image. Each woman now places 1 white candle on the altar and 1 on the outside circle stone. Women are needed to mark out the circle with flour and barley, and write the names of the goddess within the circle. They are also to consecrate the grounds with fire and air by walking around with incense in the circle. Frankincense and myrrh are traditional. Herbal incense is fine. The high priestess purifies all the grounds and herself with water and salt, or seawater if it is available. Her priestesses leave the circle to meditate. The high priestess draws the circle with her witch's knife on the ground in an uninterrupted way, separating the grounds of worship from the rest. It is drawn from east to south to west to north, leaving a gate to the east open for the women to enter. Women gather to enter, oldest first, youngest last. The high priestess sprinkles purifying water on each one, saying, I purify you from all anxiety, all fears, in the name of Diana. Woman answers, I enter the circle in perfect love and perfect trust. The high priestess kisses and embraces the woman. Welcome to the goddess's presence. With incense, the high priestess consecrates each woman with a pentagram in the air. Each woman then attends to lighting her candle on the altar and outer circle. When the last woman has entered, the high priestess closes the gate with her knife and says, The circle is closed. The goddess blesses her women. To unify, form the circle with linked bodies, hands on napes of necks. Breathe deeply to oxygenate. Every woman makes a sound with her body that can manifest as a low hum, or goddess names, or just variations of the sound the group uses. Backing the high priestess, the women turn to the east, drawing a pentagram in the air with their witches' knives. The high priestess walks to the east corner, drawing a pentagram in the air with her athame, kissing the blade after each invocation. East. Hail to thee, powers of the east. Hail to the great eagle, corner of all beginnings. Ea, Astarte, Aurora, goddess of all beginnings. Come and be witness to our rite as we perform it according to ancient rites. South. We can go. I'm going to turn around because my chair will go around. We'll make a little circle here. Hail to thee, powers of the south, corners of great fire and passion, goddess Esmeralda, goddess Vesta, and Hertha. Come and be witness at our rite as we perform it according to ancient laws. West. All right, I'm turning around, y'all. Hail to thee, power of waters, life-giving goddess of the sea, Aphrodite, Marianne, Themis, Tiamat. Come and guard our circle and bear witness to our rite as we perform it according to ancient rites. North. Hail to thee, corner of all powers, great Demeter, Persephone, Cori, Ceres, earth mothers and fates, great sea of glass. Guard our circle and bear witness as we perform our rite according to your heritage. The high priestess moves to the east corner and seals the circle with her kiss. Now the circle is really closed, and nobody can leave it until the spirits evoked are properly thanked and dismissed. Let's move on to practical advice for circling. We have gathered practices based on improvisation. So rule number 1 is to improvise anytime you feel as though creative juices are flowing. This is very important. Spontaneous praying is more powerful than the memorized out of the book kind. What comes through the soul in the moment is more powerful than what is hammered into the brain. When you recite poetry, don't worry about forgetting a line or two. Do not read from a piece of paper. Nothing can ruin high energy more than somebody whipping out a flashlight and starting to read. It's different when you are settled down at the last part, the feast part of your circles, and there is free-flowing conversation. You can read your poetry then. Remember the earth's religions preceded writing, and they invented it. Take some time alone and walk through rituals in natural places to find out what works for you. Try to worship outdoors as much as possible. Don't let yourself become too much of a backyard pagan or a living room witch. That's missing the point. Indoor gatherings are more practical when the weather is cold and you intend to go sky-clad. Sky-clad means taking your clothes off, remembering that in the craft, the naked human body represents truth. The goddess Ma'at, for example, is always shown nude, with feathers only, and she's the goddess of truth. Remember that it is a great equalizer, not a sexual thing, to take your clothes off. It also teaches you love for your body, respect for your body, and acceptance of the variety around you. Do not lend out your holy book to other people. It is notorious for disappearing from people's homes. Put your name on it right away. And if you have to lend it out, write the name of the person to whom you lent it. I have seen people buying new copies because they lent them out and never got them back. Others say the books were stolen. Now that's a bad idea, to steal holy books from each other. There are enough copies for everyone, so please buy your own copy and don't lift it from others. For health, here, let's look at this spell for health. I'm going to go through a couple spells for all of you. Light white candles on the altar. Think about the work you will do. Light incense. White magic ritual or our Sister of Guadalupe. As the incense fills your space, think about the goddess of life permeating the pores of your body. Light your petitioner candle, which is either your astral color or a deep green candle representing the color of life. Write your name 3 times on it with something sharp. Anoint it with 7 power oil, blessing oil, or your own ritual oil. Say, "This is me in excellent health. The blessing of the life goddess is upon me so that I may prosper." Light an orange candle and say, "This flame draws all that is good, all that is health, all that is strength to me." Light 3 red candles and say, "Here is the strength, the power of the goddess of life. Here is her fire of life, the threefold goddess, who rules over life and death and beauty. This is the fire that enters my body to build, to maintain, to prosper my life." Contemplate what you have said and then say, "Hygeia, goddess of health, enter my mind so that I will think strong. Blessed be, goddess Hygeia enters the cells of my body one by one and make them whole. Make them strong. Blessed be. Goddess of life, infuse the force in me that created the planet Earth. Protect my organic life so that it maintains me in this incarnation. Blessed be." Do this every Friday, the day of Venus, the goddess of life, or Freya, the Nordic goddess who gave us the name Friday. Do this for 7 successive Fridays. Let me just read to the spells to you that are in here. For love, spell to influence the minds of others, spell to improve psychic powers, spell to stop harassment at work or school, spell to find a home, spell for productive studying, a spell to still the winds, a spell to raise the storms, to get rid of what separates one from a lover, for painless separation, to hex a rapist, a spell to protect yourself from enemies, a spell to change your luck, a spell for a successful school year, a spell for protection and peace. This is an amazing one, a spell to free political prisoners. Might need to do that one. There is a money spell, which I will read to you as well, because I know that many right now are dealing with uncertainty around money. I know that many have been laid off already and have lost money. I mean, I'm not alone here either. I've lost a good deal of savings because of what's happened with the stock market. And while I'm in a better position than many other workers, I don't know how long that will continue. So knowing how to perform a money spell is essential. So yeah, I will read their suggestions here, but also feel free to look around and come up with a spell yourself using bits and pieces that resonate most with you and with what you have. All right. So this is the money spell. Decorate your altar with money drawing herbs, sage, mandrake, red clover, bloodroot, chamomile, nutmeg, myrrh, etc. Anoint 1 orange glass candle with money drawing oil and bless the candle in the name of Isis of 1,000 breasts. Place it in the center of your altar at the 4 corners of the universe. Place the 4 green glass candles anointed with the magnet oil, as well as money drawing oil. Begin the ritual after sundown. after contemplating the skies and looking for the evening star, Venus. Once she appears, you can begin. Light the 2 white altar candles first, saying, "Blessed be thou creature of fire," acknowledging that the flames are conscious creatures. Then light your thurible with a herbal mix or money-drawing incense. High Joan the Conqueress. So I don't know if you're familiar with High John the Conqueror root, and it's often used in magical practice. They've changed the name to High Joan the Conqueress here, so that's quite clever. Great Mother, I come to you, just step back a second. It's that thing that, Mary Daly spoke of in reversing the reversals, reclaiming back for the goddess what was taken. So obviously this natural root is of a female essence, and yet we call it High John the Conqueror when it is, it is that female essence within it that we are trying to awaken. Okay. Great Mother, I come to you. I live in this world, and the wealth is all in the hands of the masters, mostly men. They have had the power now for 10,000 years. Great Mother, we are asking you to help. You are the true owner of the wealth. Please blow the karmic winds in our favor. Let my cupboard fill with food, and my checkbook with balances. Allow me the livelihood of the daughters of Isis. Be my nurturing mother. I invoke thee. Souls of nature, women woven within all hearts, make the jobs go to women, and all have enough. Now light the orange candle and say, "This candle represents me. Like the magnet, I draw encouragement, money, friends around me." Then light the green candles all around, from east to north. Say, "Thus I draw money from the east, the south, the west, and the north." Surround your orange candle evenly with cinnamon and contemplate. Say, "Mine is the blood, the mother's blood which promises life. Mine is the blood that promises substance. Mine is the blood of the Lady of Plenty. The goddess bestows reasonable wealth on her sisters who ask for it. Great goddess, bless my life with health, and let me have no more want, so mote it be." Each day for 3 days repeat this ritual, moving your green candles closer to the center. When they touch, let them burn down all the way. While they burn, always burn your money-drawing High Joan the Conqueror rest incense. And put all the money that comes to you from now on onto your altar before depositing or spending it. This spell can be followed with a white candle lit while the flame still burns in the ritual candles, so the fire is continued from the spell. There's a spell to attract money, a spell to get a job. Then there's recipes for different things. Let's see. There's acacia is said to be sacred to Diana and was one of the sacred trees in the ancient groves. Mix a little with sandalwood incense and burn them. This allows the spirits to commune with you. Witch's broom. Soaked in water, it makes excellent purifying water. Sprinkle it where magic work is to be done. So let's see, there's different recipes for, or like different ways to use different herbs as well in like spell work. There's a righteous hex against violent criminals. There is a spell to gain psychic balance after rape, which I will read here, as I know many of my viewers have unfortunately had this experience. Gather your women friends around you and let them go pick blossoms. Prepare a ritual bath any time of the day or night and throw a pinch of salt in the tub for purification. Light peace incense or ritual incense. Let your women friends attend to you. Scrub your back, chit-chat, etc. Throw the flowers they have picked in the tub. Luxuriate in the setting, talking about renewal and beauty, especially yours. After your bath, make sure your bed, if this patriarchal outrage has occurred on it, is also renewed. Let your friends burn the sheets and take the mattress outside and beat it. Let the sun bleach away the sorrow and humiliation. Keep in mind, you are still beautiful and it is not your fault. May patriarchy fail. There is an old Hungarian health spell, a spell to remove warts, a spell of continuance of your special requests, a spell to appease the angry fates. This spell comes from chthonic culture, the earth religion prominent prior to the invention of male gods. Such a culture has been examined by many historians and philosophers, and is described by Engels as a matriarchal period, when only communal property and high status for women were known. The spell is good for legal cases, dealing with justice, freeing someone from prison, or averting the evil eye. It is particularly good to perform this ritual when you have moved into a new space or a new area, in order to make friends with the earth spirits abiding there. Then there's all sorts of recipes for oils and places where you can get them. I've actually been here at Enchantment in New York City. So there's Pan's Forest and Herb Co. in Maple City, Michigan. Enchantments in New York, New York. Magic Circle Herbs in in Mount Horeb, Wisconsin, and the House of Hermetics in Hollywood, California. I don't know about the others, but this one is still open. The Dianic tradition and the rites of life. And this is another beautiful goddess image. The Dianic Genesis. In the beginning, there was an unknowable silence. She had an unknowable name which echoed through the universe. The power of this name that no one shall utter filled the universe with action. Silence broke into its components, lights and shadows. From these lights, action made form, and from the shadows, formlessness. Visible and invisible, she created a blend of the two we know today as nature. In this blend of form and formlessness, lights and shadows, visible and invisible, she created all the creatures, making infinite variations of herself as the birthing force, and the different form of her, where she is not so clearly visible, the birthed-in form. She intermingled with herself as she was never divided, and created our solar system, our mother planet, and all the creatures upon it. Among the creatures she had ordained, all species will know her either through instinct or through search. But all she created will periodically return to her holiness, and then again take form inside her. And ever since, the world has been a blend of invisible forms, female and male, and a blend of invisible forms, self-love and self-hate. The divine mixing of these creates reality, for her essence is present in all, but her forms do not conform to contemporary social orders. She is the circle of rebirth. Thus we celebrate the moment in our lives as an honor to her, she whose genesis is still happening. She who has not returned to any comfortable heaven to watch over us or forget us. She who still creates all reality daily. She who is visible and invisible in nature. She whose name is secret. She who rules the universe, the force of life and death, and all that is in between. She is all. Then they have these lovely New Age Dianic affirmations. Upon rising, it is always good to have some sort of greeting as one enters the day. It is common in most spiritual practices to have some sort of affirmation of gratitude for another day of life. This one is, I reconnect my soul with the universal intelligence, the goddess Durga, organizer of the universe, multi-armed, ever ablaze with the fire of life. Let me be led by Durga's power, blessed be. When in traffic, my universe is a safe universe. It is the goddess Athena who protects my wheels. I am encircled by a blue light and then a white. I am divinely alert and hold the hands of the mothers. I am safe. I am blessed. I am safe. Etc. Oh, here we go on entering your bath. It is not just cleanliness I seek. I reconnect myself with the life-granting waters of life. I am renewed in body and soul. When falling in love, O Aphrodite, I felt your sting and now you are on your way. I shall prepare my soul for you with flowers and lack of fear. If only it were so simple. The Dianic tradition, concepts of women's mysteries, the goddess Themis, introductions to the rites of life. This is an image of Persephone and Demeter. And isn't it nice that Persephone has been returned to us yet again? I have been very, very ecstatic as I venture out to, my local world, and I am seeing all the blooming flowers and trees, and it is particularly interesting because it is so beautiful and so fresh out, and yet the streets are deserted. It is quite surreal, I have to say, this spring that we are in. But I am not allowing myself to miss the flowering of spring. There are blessings, thanksgivings, rituals, very important stuff. I mean, a lot of the rituals in this book center around self-affirmation and self-love. There's a ritual for your birthday. There's a ritual for, the new moon, rituals for daily life. In every way, they encourage, each day to be celebrated and thought of as a magical experience. A ritual for conception. A ritual for menstruation. I mean, how many of you celebrate, your cycle coming? Or if you no longer have a cycle, did you celebrate the end of it? There's a beautiful ritual here to celebrate the end of the menstruating. Welcoming a new mother into the circle of mothers. There is a naming ritual for dedicating a newborn child. So, in like the Christian religion, they have christenings, but here you could have your child named and dedicated in the goddess faith. It's quite extensive, How to ritual for celebrating middle age and responsibility. Oh, ritual for healing after removal of ovaries or womb, breasts, etc. I know this is particularly a very difficult thing that many women have gone through, and there is not a lot of room for that grieving process, but here there is. They specifically look at how to honor the female experience and the scope of it. It's quite beautiful. A croning ritual, so entering the wise age. A ritual for planting a grove. Attitudes toward death. How to prepare for death. Megara, goddess of death. How to bury the dead, how to perform burial rites, how to have a feast in celebration of the dead, and how to do a devotion to the dead. Right, I just got little chills. I think I need to do one. The Great Rite, general sexual practices. Let me read the first paragraph here. The Great Rite is a feature of Earth religions which has received little discussion in feminist witches circles thus far. The reason is that we are not quite ready to take on the entire concept. At one time, I even offered a promise to the goddess that if I could salvage my love life, sparing myself all the sorrows and tilting the scales to the side of pleasure, I would found and lead a Dianic great rite to Aphrodite, thereby honoring the goddess of love. Did I do it? No. Instead, I found that I was jealous, possessive, masochistic, and a coward in general. I had a similar experience when I invoked the goddess Aphrodite into my being and found myself massively unequipped to deal with the power of what she brings forth in us. So I'm glad to see that I too was humbled because, yeah. Also, the further returns of my love life ran toward intensive contemplation of the life force as in sex. I was faced with my own failings. For the first time in my hedonistic, life-affirming love style, this high priestess didn't do very well. I even had a second lesson and a few reruns. As a high priestess, I must explore what the ancient people have left to us, believing in the heritage of women's sexual modes and practices, especially since a few good working models are still with us. Even a short search sheds a lot of light on the probable causes of much unhappiness. Consider the rampant loneliness shown by the ever-increasing numbers of women committing suicide, and those driven to desperate measures in their drive for survival. What happens to women happens to all. We know that the goddess is intimately connected with religious sexual practices. When mating and pleasuring are observed in her honor alone, the sexual inhibitions of any era are defeated. Patriarchal sexual mores are direct reversals of this religious sexual enjoyment. All taboos of Judeo-Christianity were made against the values of the old religion. The forcible suppression of women's basic orgasmic nature and the intolerance shown women's natural cycles are perversion and represent a sexual glorification of the male without the influence of the Great Mother. All this reflects a death worship so deeply ingrained in our society that we can hardly identify it, even as we exist in it. The essence of the Great Rite was that women related sexually to more than one man or woman during its celebration, often experiencing pleasure with many others. This took place in the fresh furrows of the newly plowed earth, in private rooms, in the woods, in the mountains, in all cultures, in festivals honoring Aphrodite, Ishtar, Isis, Astarte, Hera. The sacred time was calculated according to the cycles and seasons of the earth. And the women of earth did as the goddess did. Nature is not possessive. She is certainly promiscuous by Christian standards. But then nature is still at it, unconquerable because she is divine. When the Great Rite was used liberally in sexual festivals in celebration of life, the communities were more closely bound, happy, and fulfilled. Even crime decreased. There was no time for it. Sex was divine, and violence was not. People do not change or truly experience a revolution until they come to terms with a healthy, natural sexuality. When sexual standards changed, so did we. Through our sexuality, the goddess reveals herself, energizes us, and instills a bond that peacefully holds together sizable communities. The sexual mores of the goddess are free, open, and inclusive, never discriminating against the few, the plain, the infirm, the unique. Aphrodite accepts all, merging in her name, and the community reaps great benefits from it in the form of increased good health, vitality, and tolerance for all. Pleasure is a virtue in earth religions. Oneness of all nature is much sought after in the sexual union, be it with female-male variations or female with female and male with male. Creativity generally, rather than procreation exclusively, is the object of tantric, Wiccan, earth religion practices. Esoterra, which is Valentine's Day. The scent of blooming flowers and the warming sun herald the time in nature when all is opened up for renewal. Flora comes of age, fauna abound, and all is ready for love. In the ancient times, we celebrate the importance of this time with processions through the streets, dances, and curious sprinkling rituals. In Hungary, they still do this in the countryside at Easter. Young boys go from house to house with vials of perfumed water and sprinkle all female members of the home, old and young alike. When this has been done, the women offer the boys boiled eggs, sometimes painted especially for a particular admirer. This is clearly a non-personal mating ritual, very sexual in nature. In this country, Valentine's Day takes the place of Esoterra, usually celebrated around March 30th. But at a time when nature is not attuned to the same vibrations, February 14th, the day currently signified as Valentine's Day, falls during a period when the ancients were celebrating Diasia, a gloom festival. Blooming love is strained when nature is not yet ready for it. The wooing which goes on today through gifts and flowers and love messages sent via cards is a modern mating dance, celebrated too early. Today, a general public ritual could be held using a circle of flowers. Gather all your friends together, inviting them all as singles. Let them all come to the circle by themselves, bringing flowers from your area. Form a circle while holding the flowers in your hands and just hum together, humming for the power within you. The drawing of the flowers, a self-blessing ritual. Chapter 3, Celebrating the Holy Days of the Earth. I don't know what the origin of this is, but I do think it is yet another particularly fascinating goddess image. You see, like, it's like crown, the faces, the breasts, the spirals. The sacred wheel. Study the great mandala of our lives, the wheel of karma, the wheel of life, the way. All is encompassed by it. Nothing escapes the ordered, complicated, sensitive, and effective chain of events. The wheel of change. All that is alive must change. That is the law. What does not change dies, and thus changes. All is subject to the law of the way. The goddess Dike is associated with the wheel, a floating angel-like winged goddess, Victory. Her names are many. As Themis's daughter, she is a sister to Truth, the goddess Ma'at. Contemplate the great mandala in terms of your internal life. Contemplate yourself as a part of the great design. You belong here. This is your spaceship. Nobody leaves to ascend to heaven or descend into hell, because they both exist simultaneously in the here and now. You can move into heaven now if you wish. You've probably already visited hell. Redemption is like responsibility. You cannot pass it on. It is you, and it is us, makers of divine choices, makers of karma, makers of change, and maintainers of the wheel. So, let's see. They have the Sabbats. They start with Yule, which is the winter solstice. One of my favorite Sabbats is Candlemas. It is actually the day before my father's birthday, so it is always a very interesting time for me, Candlemas. It also has some ancestral, apart from like my father's birthday, it also has ancestral significance. Let's see. There's the spring equinox, which is actually happening in 2 days. So let's read about this. Theme, the return of Persephone from the underworld to reunite with her mother, Demeter. This is the holy day of the continuation between mothers and daughters, the life force perpetuating and rejuvenating all in nature. Green candles are used, symbolizing the green flora that has appeared again above the earth. 2 silver candles are placed on the altar, symbolizing the maiden aspect of the goddess who rules this part of the year. Proper preparation, grounds and circle cast, purified with water, admittance in order of age, consecration with fire, corners of the universe evoked, and unifying as usual. High Priestess. We invoke thee, O Persephone, Cori, Diana, Artemis, the ever-young maiden, and Flora, the new life that is all around us. We invoke thee by root, by stem, and by bud, by leaf and by blossom. We invoke thee by seed, by life to transfuse our lives and souls with thy fresh energy. As you have risen from the ground, so shall your sisters, we who call upon thee. As you have united with your joyous mother Demeter, so shall we unite with our mothers while in life, and close the gaps of socialization that separate us. Hail to thee, maiden, unconquerable and ever young life force. Bless thy sisters who call upon your guidance for sisterhood. Make our hearts fill with love for one another, for our sisters and mothers and offspring. So mote it be. Then they have May Eve, April 30th, right before May Day. Then there is, let's see, Oh, missed it. Where did it go? Midsummer Night, the summer solstice. Then there is the Lammas. Then there is the autumnal equinox in September. Then there is the Hallowmas, the Women's New Year. Halloween. And then there are the Esbats. Women's holidays in the Dianic tradition, and here is another fascinating goddess image. Feralia and Lupercalia, the fertility festivals. Deaja, the ward-off poverty festival. Takes place on the night of March 14th. The community would journey to the temple of the big snake goddess Uazit. There they would offer food to the Cobra Queen in order to exorcise poverty and illness from their lives. Anestheria, Blessings on the Vine Festival. Thargelia, the Festival of the First Fruits. Pharmakos, which is a part of Thargelia. It's a ceremony of ritual purification and stimulation. Kalanteria and Plantaria, the Nurturance Festivals. Vestalia, the Fire Festival. Arachiphoria, the Nymph Festival, which is a trust festival of responsibility and of friendship, devoted to maidens and culminated in the Feast of Athena. Thesmophoria, the Festival of Women's Rites. It was law among the Athenians that they should celebrate the Thesmophoria yearly, and the Thesmophoria is this. Women who are virgins and have lived a holy life on the day of the feast place certain customary and holy books on their heads, and as though to perform a liturgy, they go to Eleusis. The origins of Thesmophoria are very ancient. In fact, it is here we find the roots of magic, blessings, curses, pronouncements, and the beginnings of law binding. The moral convictions of the communities were pronounced, and all enemies of the people were cursed. This took place in front of the doors of the appropriate temples of the goddesses, especially Demeter and Artemis. Aristophanes, I'm not sure, I'm not as good with ancient Greek, recorded the words of a woman performing the Thesmophoria. I bid you pray to gods and goddesses that in Olympus and in Pytho dwell, and Delos and to all other gods or plots of tyranny, or a female slave in her master's ear tells tales, or male or female publican scants the full measure of our legal pint. Curse him that he may miserable perish, he and his house, but for the rest of you, pray that the gods give you all good things. The Stenia is a bitching festival. This is interesting. This stunning festival takes place during the Thesmophoria. Crones of the community were enthroned in tents made of fig branches, while younger women tended to them with food and drink. After eating, the younger women were turned loose to playfully harass and insult one another, using all the bad language they wished. As evening came, the young women would continue to abuse each other through scurrilous jesting, name-calling, throwing dirt clods and small stones, and wrestling with each other. This all took place in the tents under the gentle supervision of the crones, and was a powerful way to eliminate unhealthy feelings and unreleased resentments. Since it served to promote growth and new life in relationships, This bitching brought good luck to all who observed it. Skira, the festival of images. Haloa, the festival of free speech. The Eleusinian Mysteries, the festival of the return of the daughter. So this is when we celebrate Demeter's, or when we celebrate Persephone's return to the underworld. The goddesses and the god. So the understanding of the true being of Aphrodite. The goddess of love is the only aspect of the goddess that has not been totally discarded, even though she has been negatively regarded and severely misunderstood. The goddess of love represents both beauty and wisdom and is the second aspect of the triad. It is possible that this particular aspect of the goddess survived patriarchy because of her ability to bear children and her relatively easy accessibility as a tool for men's pleasure. Aradia, the female avatar, the god. And here they have a representation of Pan. Hoof and horn, all that dies shall be reborn. Corn and grain, all that falls will rise again. The sacred sons. So these are the sacred sons of the goddess. Sons and lovers. And this is one interesting thing about like ancient goddess cults and even ones that survive today. The god is actually not the equal of the goddess. The god is actually a child of, a son and consort. So the god dies and is reborn through her. It's quite a fascinating system, and it also like really kind of speaks to why like the term motherfucker is such a it's interesting that it is like this incredible insult in this culture, because in the ancient goddess like religion it's actually like a divine act. So not that I'm suggesting anything like that should happen, but so yeah, they have this stuff for men, a ritual to accept manhood, acceptance of matriarchal manhood, modern ritual. So for men who wish to, there is stuff in here for men who wish to follow this religion. Prophecy, tarot, runes, astrology, dreams, reincarnation, automatic writing, and fortune telling. I think I've done enough of a bitching festival in my life. But yeah, I mean, it's a great idea, and it does seem, to be rather, I mean, as I said, it was meant to be playful and that like a way to get out resentments. Witches throughout the ages were involved in finding things out. My mother read palms, but she confided in me that she just had to hold someone's hand and the stories about that person came into her head. She merely repeated what she heard. She taught me how to read cards. It was a deck of 32 suits and had subtitles in 4 languages. Mother always knew what was going to happen. I believe we all do. The outlines of our lives have definite cornerstones that are predestined, but we also have many choices. We all know that before we reincarnate, what it is we have come here to observe and manifest. The human organism must, and always does, block it out in order to survive the evolution of human life. There are other forms of divination, such as the crystal ball, chicken bones, the I Ching. My favorite is the tarot. I have read the tarot since I was 21. In February 1975, I was arrested for fortune-telling by an undercover policewoman. I was tried in court in front of a full jury and convicted as a witch. I also had to post $2,500 bail, unheard of in such crimes as reading the tarot. We appealed the California Supreme Court to remove laws interfering with practices of the craft. The Supreme Court struck down the law in 1985. However, here I will show you the subversive science, a feminist interpretation based on a lifetime of feedback. As I said, my preferred means of divination is the tarot deck, which I keep in a Hungarian hand-embroidered pagan folk art cloth, red with golden edges. It is lined with silk, and I believe it was always meant to be a cards cloth and not the pillowcase I found it in. What I know about the origins of the tarot comes from a story my mother told me, and since the patriarchy has no certainties, I will share it with you. Mother said it originally was designed about 2,300 years ago, when Alexander the Great burned down the matriarchal libraries. Scrolls of knowledge and ageless wisdom perished in the flames, especially at the largest library in Alexandria. The existing scientists, particularly matriarchal and partially new patriarchal, gathered at a conference to resurrect the living knowledge still in their heads. Being from different parts of the world, they had a language problem, so they devised the tarot deck to communicate with each other through symbols they had all agreed upon. Thus, the human condition was reduced to 21 forces, and later enlarged to 78 pictures. The tarot, I suspect, comes from matriarchal origins. The scientists didn't just make up a brand new thing in the world of divination. The European fortune-telling deck has 32 cards, and though I prefer the more sophisticated tarot deck, I use it according to European rules. My mother taught the system to me. She had learned it from an old witch, Victoria, who worked for my mother's house in rural Hungary. I consider the tarot primarily a tool for meditation. The Tree of Life, which is the format of the basic layout, comes from ageless times past, going back to early portrayals of the goddess as a tree. The Tree of Life is a primary symbol of human evolution and understanding of the universe. And so she goes on here to talk about and define what the various cards in the tarot mean, and then she goes over the runic alphabet, astrological birth control is in here. Ooh. How to do dream interpretation, how to record dreams, interpret them, and obtain guidance from them. Past lives. Reincarnation theories. A technique to recall past lives. Gather with a leader. You need a leader or facilitator because you cannot recall and direct at the same time. Lie comfortably on the floor, breathing in and out together, merged in chaotic meditation, which is to say no focus, no reaction, just like staring into the fire. Once everybody is comfortable, the leader sits up and lights 2 white candles dedicated to memory. She burns a light incense, such as frankincense or myrrh. The leader. I am calling on the guides to lead us back in time. Come, goddess, in your aspect of history. Come, awareness before our birth times. Come and reveal the pictures in our minds. Do not frighten us, but heal. Now the leader starts a count back in this way. We are all going back to a year ago this time. Meditate and see what you see a year ago this time. And then they go back to the 19th century. Then they go back further. And then at the end, you thank the goddess of history. So quite interesting. Then there's stuff about automatic writing. Here we have a beautiful image of 3 goddesses in the chapter on food. And it seems that this has gotten dark, so I'm going to turn the light up here so you can see better. Quite lovely. Energy of life. Let's see what they say about meat. I haven't read this. The brainwashing mentality of our culture extends to the treatment of our soils, our food, our female lives. Meat has traditionally been associated with male virility. If a man could not bring home the bacon, he couldn't provide for his family. The canning and food processing industry employs mostly women, yet all butchers and meat packers are men. Meat is so strongly identified with the worst animal attributes of men. It is always a wonder to me that feminists still eat meat, but our social and cultural habits die hard. Most of us grow up as meat eaters. We could not think of a meal without thinking of that space on our plate, often half the plate, that would be filled with meat. But there is very little support from society for becoming a vegetarian. But in learning about our bodies and our health, we realize that meat is not essential to our well-being. I don't agree. Anyway. But there's that. And then there's this bit about sugar, which is interesting. I'm sure we all know how bad sugar is for us. This is an interesting. Our bodies are made up of about 40 known nutrients. If we eat whole foods which contain all the known nutrients, then our bodies will have what they need to grow, repair tissue and bone, and maintain our health. When we eat food that is only partially complete because it has been refined and processed, its original plant shape disguised, and its original life energy destroyed, we are not providing ourselves with all we need to remain healthy. The longer we eat incomplete foods, the longer our bodies will lack the needed nutrients. We then fall into a state of disease. We are missing some of the necessary links to the nutrient web. There are many different diets and philosophies of food, but most agree on some basic types of food we should eat daily to ensure that we get all we need. We continue to need these nutrients in our lives. Witches, covens, shamans, magic, and ritual. Then it has the question of whether you should have a coven or a grove. I don't think that Dianics are necessarily all vegetarian. Some of this book is opinion. There's a traditional card game where I'm from, and I saw an old woman study fortune with them for the last time last year. The part about tarot cards makes me curious about cards that have been. I know that there are different sorts of cards that people have used. In terms of tarot, while this is a fascinating story that she was told, there's not really any clear story or history about where the ideas came from exactly, or the system. I know that playing cards were only utilized in Europe in the Middle Ages, so that's when they started playing the game, and I believe that they began using them for divination later. But who knows? I mean, they're full of spiritual wisdom that were only available to the elites anyway. Here, let's look at the laws of the craft. Many are disappointed to find that we have no 10 commandments, but only one golden rule. Do as thou wilt and harm none. There are also expectations and requirements of behavior in the craft. I will try to sum them up. Honor the high priestess. Honor the succession of teachers. Relate back to the mother coven on midsummer when all the tribes are gathering. If there is dissent in the coven, make a new coven. A coven's loyalty is the coven's luck. Do not hex anybody within your group or mess with her psychically, but rather go to the high priestess or priest and use regular methods of problem solving. Avoid irrational anger, then follow the coven's advice. If that doesn't work, leave the group. Hexing is generally avoidable. You are as secure as your own psyche allows. If you imagine that some witch can really harm you, you give a lot of power to that person. But if you don't, you can just fly above it all and let the vibes fall back where they came from. Men often try to make women lose their heads so they can have them. It may work on a non-initiate, but once a woman is her own possession, she is secure against self-serving kitchen witches with lust on their mind. Male witches manipulating women are not much different from society's patriarchal pig messages, in which women internalize and participate in their own slavery. A witch bows to no man. A woman with goddess consciousness is stronger than any patriarchal messages and can change her life and rid herself of unwanted demands. The high priestess represents the life force in the coven, and the high priest is her consort and lover. The high priestess is supreme. Her consort is sacred to her, but is never her master or lord or guru. Ugh. Many covens have couples in them, others have singles. Then there's ethics within the coven. The only law is that you cannot steal a coven from the high priestess. If a priestess started a group and she led, taught, and grew with the coven, a new member cannot just come up and say, let's leave our teacher behind now, let's get rid of her. If there is disagreement in the coven, the one who is in disagreement must leave. She may start her own group. In fact, this is a good way to propagate the craft, but she cannot destroy a group that is already present. Then there is a ritual for becoming ordained in the Dianic faith and how to practice on your own. Possession by Christian demons and devils. Oh, this is interesting. And the news recently was the tragic story of a young woman who died of starvation while being exorcised by Christian priests. They were charged with murder, and their defense produced a tape of the young woman speaking in a male voice and hurling obscenities at them. The possession, not the exorcism, was to blame, claimed the defense. The devil made the woman starve to death. The Inquisition was satisfied. This particular case is one of many in which we see the emergence of a frighteningly ignorant thought form, the relatively new idea of a devil. Christians, Muslims, even Krishna people pay a lot of attention to the concept of evil incarnate. The Christian devil, like their God, is male. The same holds true for Muslims. Hinduism differs in that it offers female evil in the person of Kali. The truth is that duality religions, something Wicca is not, need a bad guy from whom their good guy can save humanity. Their gods are usually warrior types, fashioned after heroes and military figures. Television reflects this duality in the good guys in white catch the bad guys in black theme. In essence, the patriarchal gods and devils are the exact flip sides of each other. If you have one, you get the other. Patriarchal duality, good, bad, black, white, god, devil, man, woman. There are other ways. Kali is quite different, representing a fossilized belief in the ancient trinity of the goddess. Within the natural cycles of all life, Kali brought change, transformation, rebirth, and regeneration. But in contemporary India, Kali's shrines are virtual slaughterhouses. Kali does not possess people's minds. In her cycle, she has no flip side. She is round. The destruction in Kali is the death necessary for rebirth. Future-oriented death is not evil, it is natural. It is a part of the round. Frankly, my cure for diabolical possession would consist of an intensive program of education, prevention, and a removal of all the negative and harmful myths this person may have absorbed. In case a witch has to attend to a person who is possessed by the Christian devil or patriarchal demons, remember that the great goddess is life. She can be stimulated in even the most brainwashed mind. A trinity of priestesses should first purify the room with frankincense and myrrh, making invocations to the four corners of the universe. Enclose the space with a protective magic circle. Shamanism throughout herstory. Shamanic roots of European traditions. Song of the Holy Women. Initiation of the shaman drums. Invocation of the Fire Mother. Shaman invocation of the goddess of spring. Weather work. Parting clouds, whistling up the winds. The Song of Amergin, A Round of the Year, translated from the Celtic by Robert Graves and Chris Carroll. Wow. So in this section, there's a lot of music to be sung, and I played drums too. Masika's Blood of Life, a Hungarian heritage. My mother, Masika, was the result of an immaculate conception, the facts of which are strange but true. Grandmother lived outside the small town of Jess and Chandras, on a farm used for livestock and various crops. Through 7 months of the year that Masika was born, grandmother had no idea she was with child. She had not been fertilized by a man and menstruated regularly every month. However, she put on weight, and when her back began hurting a little, she went to the doctor for a checkup. To everyone's astonishment, grandmother returned home with my mother, all wrapped up in a baby blanket. At birth, Masika lacked nearly everything necessary for a healthy baby, and weighed a mere 170 decagrams. Truthfully, nobody expected her to survive. But this baby showed extraordinary endurance, and Victoria, an old woman who worked in grandmother's house, adopted Masika almost as her own. Constantly vigilant, Victoria kept a close watch on Masika, cooking very special foods for her while trying to nurse her into health. Victoria was a very well-known witch from Transylvania. From Victoria, my mother learned all the arts of witchcraft, how to bless and curse, how diseases are cured with natural herbs, how to understand the language of animals, how to read cards and omens, and how to speak with the spirits. One time my mother became seriously ill, and doctors were imported from the capital, Budapest, to heal her, but nothing they did made her any better. The illness spread to her kidneys and eyes. She was at her end. Late one night, as Masika lay dying in bed, she awoke to find Victoria in her room. The old woman's hands bade Masika to keep silent as she brought 2 containers into the room, one filled with 13 eggs, the other empty. Then Victoria pulled open the curtains of the window, allowing the full moon to shine brightly into the room. The time has come, she said, as she took Masika's nightgown off and sat the child in the bright beams from the moon. Mother's skinny little body trembled in the cold as Victoria began her cure. One by one, Victoria took the eggs from the basket, stroking each one gently and fully over a part of Masika's body. She left not 1 inch untouched. She placed the eggs in the empty basket after she used them. Victoria prayed constantly as she did this, chanting rhymes for power and healing, mixing sweetly with the pagan and the Catholic, according to universal imagination. "I am going to take this illness away from you," promised Victoria. She then went home and built very special nests, placing the healing eggs in them. Later, she cleverly left them in various places on the dirt roads of the countryside, as if they were stray nests left by some wandering hen. Daily she visited the nests, watching to see how many of the eggs were still there. Then one day Victoria whispered to my mother, "Only 2 nests are left, and when they have been picked up, you will be well." The physicians from Budapest just looked on, waiting for the child's death, but instead Masika's fever broke. "All the nests are gone," Victoria told Masika on another day, and Mother got up and walked, acting fully cured. Years later, my mother said she had been healed because she believed Victoria more than she believed in any other human being. Wow. And then there's stories of the clairvoyance in her family, the superstitions, a book of superstitions, a book of dreams, a book of cures, from Mother's Book of Sorrows. The Goddess of 10,000 Names. Come with me to the temple, close your eyes, and then open them again. I will show you images of the goddesses created before us by goddess-worshipping people. We are not the first nor the last, and even if we were the first women to turn to worship themselves and their own creativity in the goddess, then more glory to us. I will not attempt to convince you of the authenticity of what you see. You must trust your own eyes and common sense and learn to look. It is important to see these images without being distracted by what they are called, classified, or thought to be by archaeologists. Archaeologists are not witches who yearn to see the goddess. Her guises often mislead them. We don't have many allies among scientists today. Their craft threatens them. Their jobs may be in real danger if they start telling the truth. The possibility that there was ever a society where women ruled, or the belief in women's inherent ability to be superior, is abhorrent to them. The temple is for those who are excited seeing her in a different light. The temple can be entered through your mind with a clear affirmation of life. Come now. Images abound of the Mother Goddess, female principle of the universe and source of all life. This imagery is much more important than we have been told. She lives in clay, in stone, in ancient tools, in modern paintings. She has been changed almost beyond recognition by patriarchal militaristic forces. But she survives. Here is a great corn goddess of South America, Lady Unique Inclination of the Night, giving birth. Her delivery is painless because she knows nothing about a curse from a jealous Christian god. Women knew how to lessen the pains and expel the afterbirth through herbs. They didn't think of giving life as a punishable crime. The great corn goddess gives birth to herself. The goddess Mother Demeter is often seen sitting on her throne. She is the fertile earth from where all bounty comes. She is the lawgiver and the protector of women. Kori, maiden, corresponds to Persephone, daughter of the earth. She represents all that is above the ground and is usually portrayed with a sacred flower or the apple of dominion held in her hand. It is the same apple we later see Mary holding in Christian temples. The apple Eve sank a healthy bite into was always her apple. I'm going to close my window because I just got a cool breeze. The Egyptian maiden goddess is Hathor, whose law is change. She wears a headdress with a disk of the sun and a disk of the moon as her crown. Since she invented writing, her favorite plant is the papyrus, which she usually holds in her hand. Hathor is the maiden aspect of Isis. One of Hathor's holidays is a time when everybody gets drunk. Another of her festivals is when she is angry and tears patriarchal men apart, reveling in the sea of their blood. She is a passionate goddess. The great goddess Nut also comes to us from Egypt. She is the universal goddess, encircling everything. The sky goddess and the earth goddess are represented as part of her trinity, and between them is the calendar of planting cycles, considered sacred wisdom to the followers of Nut. The concept behind this is that if you know when and how to plant, then you will consistently create enough food to nurture your body, with time left over to engage in the creation of beauty. Nut became a symbol for women marching to take back the night, because she rules the universe and the darkness. Goddess Hygeia holds a boa constrictor, a symbol of her regenerative powers. Statues of her show a real, seemingly familiar black woman's face. Many artists of the periods used the faces of real people in their creative expressions of the goddess, so we know how these people looked. Images such as those of Hygeia probably came from the women physicians who believed that their towns should have statues of the healing aspect of the goddess in order to stimulate healing in themselves. The goddess Bast comes to us from Egypt. She is the sun, powerful and able to affect the growth of living things. She was generally seen as a black cat or lion-headed goddess, very much involved with dancing and expressions of pleasure. Egyptian physicians were often recognized by the symbol of the black cat, who is worshipped for its symmetry, its disposition, and its strong relationship to Bast. Nero, are you listening to this? In Europe, Bast became Diana Lucifera, moon and sun goddess. Lucifera appeared a mere century away from the concept of Lucifer as a fallen angel. Lucifera was in reality the goddess Lucina, brilliant sun of healing. Lucifera is the maiden aspect, usually shown holding the torch of the sun. Later on, this image recurs in the Statue of Liberty. We see the sun goddess, crowned with a crescent, holding up the torch of life. Kali the Terrible is the goddess of death, greatly resented by men because of her awesome power. This concept embodies the philosophy of our ultimate return to the one who gave us life. In this case, it is not our human mother, but her kin spirit, the female principle. Kali always has a young-looking body, very fit, trim, and powerful. She is often portrayed with a beard, a symbol of wisdom and power not confined to males. Beards and garishingly protruding tongues are aggression gestures. Black Kali had a very big impact on Indian culture. Many of the ancient temples of the goddesses and Yodi shrines are decayed and overgrown with grass, but black Kalis are still intact. Even the modern Hindus in the Krishna tradition refer to this as the age of Kali, suggesting that we are in a period of great evil and wickedness. Kali is the goddess of death and regeneration, but she is not evil. As the Indian representation of Megara, Kali is often shown dancing on the body of Shiva, one of the male gods, indicating her dominance over all life, particularly the male principle of the universe. Skulls hanging from around her neck usually symbolize the many generations who went before and will follow after, as well as the inevitability of death. I think I will stop here, but it goes on. Speaking of various goddesses, and then it goes to speak of the 3-in-1, the triple aspect of the goddess. and then Luna, the moon goddess, and the signs and symbols of the goddess, which you can find everywhere. Spells and creativity. There is much more to creation than making people. There is the creation of harvests, good feelings, good health, song and art culture. What is left to us from the matriarchies is mainly in stone. Alexander, quote-unquote, the Great, having seen to it that the libraries were burned. Our foremothers have linked themselves to us through their enduring pieces of art, depicting much of their essence in clay or stone. Goddess worshippers were constantly slandered by patriarchs who attacked them as idol worshippers. We know that goddess worshipping people created art, not idols. Worshipping the goddess as a force, the people were never guilty of mistaking the representation of the force for the force herself. This is particularly well demonstrated in artistic images of the goddess without faces. As goddess worship developed, we see more varied and detailed representations of the life force. Where she was revered, her images looked like her people. Small clay figurines represent Ishtar, Ashara, Isis, and all the goddesses. These small idols were the quote-unquote abominations later described by the followers of Yahweh, because they were such an integral part of the goddess religions. Made by the women, figurines such as these were representative of different aspects of the goddess, as well as graphic expressions of the women's prayers. It seems I'm beginning to have a few little snafus with the chat again. I don't know what's going on there exactly. So, I've popped it out and hopefully I'll be able to catch everything you're saying now. These are creations of the people. The clay figurines were made at home and then carried to the temple as a votive offering. There was no interest in sacrificing living beings in mother's worship. The people made religious art because creativity was understood by all to be the cultivation of the divine, and was therefore regarded as a form of worship. Creativity was spellcasting. A statue holding a child may have represented prayers for an easy childbirth or a child needed in the family. Statues holding their breasts are pleas for nurturance, for sustenance. Fat bellies with carved furrows were petitions for fertility and abundance of food and health. Simple, instinctual folk art, expressions of needs presented to the Queen of Heaven. Such statues have been found which are up to 8,000 years old. Large ones with back-to-back crescents represented a major petition, the crescents being another universal symbol of the goddess, used by many witches as a sort of signature in their work. The meaning of the crescents used in this matter was, she who shines for all. The oldest profession. Priestessing, not prostitution, is the oldest profession. Part of Aphrodite's worship called for a priestess to lie with men to ensure their fertility, but that service to the goddess lasted only one day out of a woman's life and was not prostitution by any stretch of the imagination. Once a woman had done her service, she could spend the rest of her life priestessing in any way she chose. Ritual priestesses often ate sacred mushrooms to increase their physical strength because women of old took their religion very seriously. Celebrating and dancing for 3 days and nights was not unusual at all. Ethnic dances of all kinds have come from these sacred dancers and their religious rituals. Sacred ritual dances were taught by priestesses and used liberally to condition the minds, bodies, and souls of the entire community. Dancing was considered a form of spiritual as well as physical exercise, and appears today in such forms as yoga and tai chi. The law is, what does not move, dies. This holds true for everybody. In the old religion, it was customary for the people to go to the temple for a ritual celebration or a sabbat, and to dance and move until they could go home feeling fresh and renewed. All this was a part of the cultural heritage considered absolutely essential for the well-being of the community. Basically, a pagan priestess in the tradition of the Wicca can do anything, from blessing mothers for easy childbirth to blessing the newborn babies. Women's wisdom included not only the proper blessings, but the proper herbs to administer to people in need of healing. The high priestess presided over such rituals as trysting, the pagan counterpart of patriarchal marriage. The priestess was also responsible for blessing the fields for abundant harvest, for bringing on rains if there was a drought, and performing the proper spells to rid the town of disease or pestilence. The priestess was the fortune teller of the community, well versed in all manner of divinatory techniques and skills. The tarot is one such tool of divination, but there are innumerable others. Augury, divination by omens, sensitivity to the voices of animals, communication with plants, interpretations of stars and planets, numbers and colors. Whatever the priestess touched, the goddess of life would touch. So the priestesses of ancient times were also known as goddesses of the earth, a concept which further separates us from other religions. With the advent of militaristic patriarchal rule, the spiritual leaders of the matriarchies were an awesome power which had to be dealt with. Priestesses of Athena, Artemis, and Diana were promptly hung from the oak trees by their hair, with anvils tied around their ankles to force them to renounce Rhea as supreme goddess and accept the new male god, Zeus, as omnipotent. Through tortures which have continued to the present day, clitorectomy, electric shock, etc., these patriarchal usurpers perpetrated the most massive cultural and religious coup in the history of the planet. Today, the results of that tradition of patriarchal religious zeal mount. We see that it has brought us death worship and ecological destruction. TV preachers jubilate over the world's pending disasters as proof of their faith. In the meantime, 90% of all churchgoers are women. The true battleground for spiritual liberation is still in the temples. Here is a relief from the Temple of Ephesus again, showing that women can defend themselves. The scene is the revenge of Thermidon Amazons on Athens, because Theseus kidnapped their queen. The Amazons' existence, so often designed by scientists, looks so very real on these statues. Men don't get ideas of defeat by themselves, and certainly don't then put it into stone. But here we have fine examples of womanhood. The Amazons were strong and beautiful at the same time. Weakness was not seen as feminine. A local Amazon, Califia, gave us the name of California. The story has it that she lived and ruled with her sister and co-queen in the Bajas. She lived a prosperous but unadventurous life. They kept griffins, flying mountain lions, and trained them to tear apart any men who might land on their islands. One day, Califia decided to go adventure and help out the pagans in their fight against the Christians, halfway around the world. When she arrived in Turkey, the Christian crusades were on. She whistled for her helpers, the griffins, who proceeded to eat the men of both sides. To make up for this, she promised to personally lead the pagan troops against the Christians the next morning. In the battle, she was separated from her sister and captured. Part of her punishment was that she had to marry men whom she had bested in battle. This was a big disgrace for Amazons. But the women didn't give up. They kept talking about their golden places and silver chalices, telling their new husbands how much gold they had back in the old country. Greed got to the Christians, bet on it every time. And they set to go to their wives' country in hopes of cleaning them out. This never happened, Because nobody knows anything about the husbands after they left the harbor. The sisters returned much wiser to Baja, where they reigned in peace, no longer even missing adventure. The original sin was matricide, the toppling of the matriarchies, and the rape and murder of the mothers was, and still is, the greatest of all sins. No purging of our culture has occurred since the Inquisition, no public accounting for the sins of the fathers. A major contribution to the continuing hostility and alienation of males is their deep core of guilt. Men continue to be guilty of matricide. No amount of purification will take that blemish away. Matricide is punishable by eternal unhappiness, and the goddess punishes in different ways. There isn't a heaven or hell someplace out there. We create both right here where we live. The punishment for matricide is foul air, poisoned food, ecological disasters. Mother is not happy and she will not take this anymore. She has lots of time. Every 100 million years or so, the entire Earth gets reworked when the Queen decides that this particular spaceship has to change. That is the law. Change. What does not change dies, and even in death continues to change. Medea speaks. This is God, children. Listen up well. The beautiful blue planet, our mother, our sister. She moves with 200 miles per second, yet imperceptible. She offers the quiet of the lakes and the rushing of her rivers, the vast expanse of her oceans, the echoes of her mountains. This is God, children. Listen up well. Lift your eyes to the heavens, and you behold her sisters, the stars, and her cousins, the suns, and nebulas, and fill your senses with her infinite beauty. This is God, children, and she has made no other heaven but the heavens where you already reside, and she has made no hell, except the one you insist to create for yourself. Here is paradise, here is destiny, here is infinite grace. This is God. When you seek her, she is beneath your feet. When you seek her, she is food in your mouth. When you seek her, she is love in your heart, pleasure in your body. You share her heartbeat. The cosmic ride through space with no tickets nor spacesuits affirms your freedom, which is natural. Internalize her love for you, and you'll be loving others. Love others, and she will reward you with rich peace within. God speaks every day. God holds us in love every day. Earth children, so fragile. We are God. Channeled by Z Budapest. Conclusion. The Holy Book is but a fragment of our growing knowledge of women's spirituality. Yet it has changed women's lives and our herstory. No longer are goddess worshippers mocked as silly in the feminist movement. I wish that were the case. No longer are we seen as threatening clouds on the political horizon, but as the very essence of women's politics. Now there are more covens than can be counted, organically springing up like wild roses. Women who practice solo have increased, more conferences are planned, more newsletters of the goddess are printed, and so it should be. We don't pretend that we have covered all the areas of women's religion, but we labored in love, and we reap love. This book is published as the new right is organizing against women's rights, and when a new oppressive Christian era looms over us, never before was an articulate woman's religion more needed to sustain us. Never before was our endorsement on our own behalf more political. When we started working on the Holy Book idea, Janet Rosland found a quote from Florence Nightingale. Do you think it is possible for there to be a religion whose essence is common sense? She asked. I hope that with this volume I can answer a proud yes to the sister of the past. May the goddess bring prosperity to all who follow her paths. and may we all be free to worship her. Oh, there's writing in my book. February 1996. I am nowhere near my center, and yet I am right at it. I don't know who wrote that, but wow. One of the great things about buying used books is that you will find things like that in them. Well, that was the Holy Book of Women's Mysteries as perused by me. Obviously, I couldn't go through all of it, but I hope you enjoyed seeing what it contained. And I hope that what is in it has nourished you in some way. And yeah, I want to thank you for being here. Before you head out, if you haven't already, be sure to give the video a like. I know that most don't think of it, but it's one way to keep the video performing well. And if you are in the chat, you have to like close out of it to do it. And if this was nourishing to you, be sure to share it with someone else who needs it. I know that we had a sick sister, Shannon, watching the stream, and that this is something very soothing. And I think it is a good thing to share right now. As I said, I know that a lot of people are not feeling so well. There's a lot of anxiety and uncertainty. But remember that nature is the ultimate truth, and nature is the goddess. And as we lean into that truth, know that you always have a place in this world. All right, so I will be back sometime soon. Thanks for being here, and be well. Bye-bye.